I know it's 2 o'clock, so I definitely want to get started and respect all of everyone's time who was able to come in and join us. So, thanks for joining us today and for our episode of the Rev Ops Roundtable. And this is where we're going to be talking about various knowledge and experiences related to revenue operations and what we've learned along the way. And I'm Heather Davis Lamb. I'm founder and CEO of Revenue Ops LLC. And joining me today are three company leaders who are going to share some challenges that they faced, successes that they've had, and some advice for you, our listeners. And so our esteemed panel consists today of Adam Patterson, who's the managing partner of Sedalian Talent, Phoebe Farber, who's Director of Revenue Operations at ThreatStack, and Andy Hayworth, who's a Salesforce Administrator from the International Society of Automation. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And I'd love to take a few minutes to allow you each to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do at your respective companies. Adam, do you want to kick it off for us?
Yeah, sure, Heather. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And certainly thank you to everyone here attending today. I am Adam Patterson, so I'm a founder and managing partner of Sedalian Talent. So Sedalian Talent guides leaders in high growth, high velocity businesses to make decisions and really implement organizational improvement using technology and analytics. We know that high performing organizations, they increase employee passion, they increase employee engagement, and they drive business outcomes by aligning some of the right data sets to human capital strategy and kind of taking the right actions as prescribed by that objective talent data. So we really help businesses to prepare to use and codify data in the way that they implement strategy and change within their organization and take a little bit of the guesswork out of that conundrum of people. We love what we do. We certainly love our clients and excited to be here talking with everybody today.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Adam. That sounds really interesting. I'm sure we're going to hear more about this as our conversation goes on. Phoebe, do you want to go next and tell us a little bit about what you do at ThreatStack?
Sure. I'm Phoebe Farber. Like she said, I'm the Director of Revenue Operations at ThreatStack, which is a Boston-based cybersecurity company focused on intrusion detection. I started my career as a BDR. I was a BDR for a year, and then this is my third startup so far. So I kind of found my way into sales ops, was an accidental admin, sales and marketing ops, through sales ops at another company, and now revenue operations. So the breadth is just kind of continued, and there's never a dull moment.
Wonderful. Well, appreciate you being here, Phoebe. Thank you so much. Looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us today. Andy, do you want to take it away?
Yes, hello there. I'm Andy Hayworth, and I am an end user. I am on the IT team. I'm a Salesforce administrator at ISA, the International Society of Automation. Founded in 1945 as the Instrument Society of America. It's a nonprofit membership organization. So we, of course, have membership and membership benefits. We also run our own training, both less in person now and more virtual with the pandemic going on. We also do certifications. We run some conferences, which have also transitioned to virtual, and develop standards for industry. And the industries that we work in are the control systems and measurement in industrial settings. So water, wastewater, power, oil and gas, and things like that, as well as some discrete manufacturing and the hybrids batch, such as pharmaceutical companies. So they make their systems apply to our standards and get trained by us.
Wonderful. Sounds super interesting. I know that it's great to have you here, and I look forward to hearing about your perspective as well as we go on today. So we've got a couple of questions here that we're hoping to have the panel be able to answer, kind of talk through what their experiences are. And then if we have some time towards the end of our call here, then I'm going to throw it out there for those who are in the audience to ask some questions, and hopefully we can open that up for those folks that are here and get their perspectives on that. So our very first question is, I'm going to see if I can move your heads over here to the right. And so as a leader in your company, what do you currently see as the biggest challenge or obstacle that you faced in regards to revenue operations? Is there someone who would like to volunteer to go first?
I have a thought to share.
Sure.
To go for it. The thing that came to mind for me was kind of an evergreen challenge, and it's not necessarily unique to the role, but in my role, it definitely came up, which was sitting in a cross-functional seat, so being between, say sales, marketing, customer success, all these functions, and understanding not only like what does the function do, but within each role, maybe what do they do, what's important to them, how do they use systems. When something comes along and changes, either like an intentional change or just a shift of any kind, you can kind of in this role see the ripple effects and specific ripple effects that maybe like upper leadership doesn't necessarily think of. And so that's been an interesting conundrum at times, because you need to think through how to tactfully manage up, how to maybe get people to buy in with more persuasion than something coming down, top down, figuring out a way to explain the challenge in a way that doesn't necessarily like offend anyone or confuse anyone. So just kind of sitting there and going like crap, and like realizing something and then having to like unpack it all, probably figure out the solution you're going to propose, or at least like identify the issues, think of how to explain it to a number of different stakeholders who maybe like at different technical levels have different perspectives. So I don't think it's necessarily like a challenge that's point in time that's going to go away, but I've definitely found that to be something that's come up a number of times, and I expect it will come up again.
I think you make a really good point, Phoebe. A lot of what you're talking about is really that systems thinking, right? You're looking at the entire system rather than just one small little piece of the puzzle. I know a lot of that tends to kind of fall as well in a lot of things that ISA does, and then I know Andy deals with in the engineering space. There's a lot of systems engineering and things of that sort in there as well.
Sure, and well, just in our experience, we've run into what Phoebe's talking about is that you've got to translate something into layman's terms, but also you've got to make the case for it internally with that selling up to internal management, right? That something that's not on their radar, and also, of course, you're talking to non-technical folks. You've got to translate not just what the problem is and what we think the solution is, but that the urgency, why this is a thing, why do we need to stop what we're doing or work on this in addition to what we're working on, and why it needs funding as well, right? Oh, we need this. I found out about this problem, or we're hearing about this problem, and all right, this is the steps I'm going to go through: documenting requirements and researching it, looking into whether it's a vendor or a resource to help with all of the steps that you've got to, like, I don't know, over communicate is probably not the right term, but that's certainly a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always, right? Getting that that traction internally.
Yeah, 100%. And I know that both Phoebe and Andy both mentioned communication and translating, and that's something that I think Adam deals with on a regular basis, correct?
Yeah, it's actually one of the things that we work in a lot of our client environments on is this exact challenge that you both outlined, right? Which is what I refer to as influencing strategies. And which influencing strategy can we deploy, and how do we make sure it's the right one given the audience and the situation and the time? Thankfully we're a pretty small team here on my side of the aisle and a relatively new business. So in terms of systematic thinking, systematic challenges, we don't, I think, encumber some of those same problems. If I were to tell you the things that the biggest challenge or obstacle that I have at this point, the thing that keeps me up at night, it'd be what I would call leaky revenue. Where we have we are both a reseller and a partner of a number of member service organizations, where a portion of the revenue that we sell within those members has to go back to those to the member service organizations as a part of that agreement, or as a part of an agreement that we have with a provider in market that we're partnering in space. A portion of the revenue that we make off of those sales has to go back. So, we work with, and I have a team of consultants that work, on our team and with me, that I want to make sure are always keenly aware of the cost on the back end, both to us as a business and to make sure that our margins and that our P&L are going to be healthy at the end of the month. I think that there sometimes can be a tendency for folks to have what I call kind of carrot syndrome, right? Which is, I just want to get this closed and I'm going to get started in this project because I've built an emotional bond and emotional connection to my client and to this business outcome. And sometimes there can be an ability to obscure the fact that there's a revenue component to this, and there's a P&L impact component to this, and there's a risk that if we discount here, given a margin that we owe back to a member service organization of which we're a partner to, we might be actually losing money by pursuing this project with this potential partner client. So that having that depth and that clarity of understanding of, what are reseller agreements that are in place, or what are, member service organization agreements that we might have in place within businesses like that. Their consultants are keenly aware of that and thinking the margin, opportunity cost, and time cost that a client relationship is going to take is my biggest hurdle or obstacle I think that I've faced at this point. So, and I think as we continue to grow, I would tell you, systematizing that is going to be an even bigger challenge, which is where I'm going to lean on Heather to help us to, make sure that we have the visibility, clarity, and impact that everybody's operating from the same standard and structure. So.
Perfect. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm sure a lot of what you're speaking about, I'm sure Phoebe and Andy have run into some similar challenges at their companies as well. Don't know if that sparked any thoughts that you'd like to share there. Or...
I'll somewhat related to that. I like the part of, sometimes you got to have the ability to say no. Like, we don't have to do everything just because someone said we should. And that's certainly an issue. I mean, we're a membership organization, so we're run by not only we have hired managers and directors, but we also have an advisory board that dictates our direction that we go, that is elected positions from our membership. So there's a lot of different bosses, and that takes some coordinating. I'm fortunate I'm not the person that has to tell them no or yes very often, but there's a lot of different needs in different departments as well that really has to be managed. And who's I've got a training department and a standards department and certification and membership, and they all have different needs, and they don't necessarily know what the other's asking for or how much they're asking for, so they don't know what's on my plate. So that whose problem is more urgent? This one's making us money, but this one's customer facing, so it's a lot to manage. So communication, again, it always comes back to that for me. But that's our biggest challenge is managing all of those, all of it, just so much going on with the different needs and requests.
Andy, do you ever want to be the person to say no?
That's a tough call, right? Yes, but also no. Do I want that? Right?
I don't think anyone ever wants to be the person saying no, but unfortunately it happens. Somebody's got to do it, right?
Right. I want to be able to say no. I don't want the other responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think above that, right, you want to be able to say, I told you so, right? So.
Oh, goodness. Well, hopefully there's not a ton of I told you so's having to be out there, but
Right.
kind of on some of those thoughts, like, let's talk about maybe some successes, right? Let's talk about what has led to your greatest success, and when you're thinking about like revenue operations and kind of what you all are working on and how you're driving success within your business, those things that you've maybe told people, like, I told you so, this is what we should have done and this helped us out. Like, what was the biggest thing that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of volunteer myself to go first, and it's a relatively early stage business. And one of the things that I always point to is that work for the sake of work, if there's not a revenue component, a direct line of sight revenue component behind it, is not something that we should pursue. And there can be a tendency, right? Certainly with our chairman and with a number of the other partners, to get some really exciting projects and some things that are for both our own edification and our clients' edification, and things that we can help learn about, what's going on in the market in a broader sense, are really, really exciting, right? But we have limited resources and limited time and limited hands, and chasing every very cool thing, if it doesn't have a direct line of sight to revenue, is a huge obstacle, and it's a huge distraction. So, for me, it's what's led to our greatest success at this point has been a simple rule of taking a deep breath and counting to 10 and thinking, if I pursue this path, how quickly will I realize revenue behind it? And what does the margin behind that revenue look like? And if I don't feel comfortable with either of those answers, I don't pursue the path. right? So, certainly as we have more hands and kind of more arms at hand and a wider team and more ability to pursue some of these things, could certainly open other opportunities for us downstream. But at the time being, just where we're at, right, is a kind of high velocity early stage business. Being able to satisfy and feel confident in the answers to both of those questions is something for me that's led to great success. And there have been some very cool things that I haven't been able to pursue, unfortunately, in the time, because one of those two answers wasn't adequately satisfied for myself. But
when it comes to the numbers that you're looking at in order to make those decisions, how are you gathering all of that information, and what are you using in order to do that analysis?
yeah, it's a great thing. And one of the big things is upfront and direct conversations, both with whether or not it's partners. We do a lot of work with private equity and venture capital firms, which can have a tendency to want to do a whole lot of broader market research and get a lot of cross marketing material and empower and armor themselves to be a little bit more granular in their due diligence process as they evaluate organizations, which is great. And we want to be able to support our clients and our partners in market to do that. But what it is being really upfront and direct. Sometimes, as Andy doesn't want to be the one to say no, I don't mind saying no hand to hand and time to time, right? And
right.
it's
okay to say, hey, I have to look at the ROI on this before we decide, right?
Before
people appreciate that. It takes a little while to realize you don't have to be timid about that. People appreciate
it does,
that, right?
and it can, yeah. So what I tend to do or try to do, and whether that's myself directly or one of our partners that we work with, is say, did you ask a client, what in 30, 60, 90 days, what does success in a pursuit of this project look like, both from a deliverable perspective and a revenue perspective? And then as you're evaluating that revenue perspective, compare it against our margins and our solution set, our margins, and the types of business we do. So, we have an interesting business, and then I would tell you that there are two things that we need to do. We need to build a pretty strong recurring stream of revenue from some of the software and partnerships that we have. And that's what I call kind of the keep gas in the tank and keep the lights on revenue stream, right? Not high margin, but it can be consistent. It's low lift. It's, our folks don't have to have a ton of hand in managing that process through and through. And it can really create a lot of self-sustainability from our clients' perspective as well. Our high margin stuff is the strategy, the consulting, the coaching, the workshops, the learning and development programs that we help bring to life within our client environments. And that's the stuff that helps buy the Lamborghini, right? That doesn't keep gas in the tank, that buys the better car and the better house, right? So, taking that deep step back to say, is there a path towards a high revenue or a high margin opportunity within this if we decide to pursue it? Is it something that we can realize within a 90 to 120 day period? If you're not clear on that, do you feel comfortable going back to this potential partner, this potential client, asking that question, and figuring out, do we have alignment around both on the client side and within our side, all the work that needs to go into that? Because the other big thing too is, right, you could pursue a project, and then as you begin to get into that project, you realize it's 200 to 250 hours, right? So when you have a small team and you're burning through 1/6 to 1/5 of your labor force in order to pursue something, you have to make sure that margin on the back end is really, really high.
Mm-hmm.
So
100%. I think that's great information to keep in mind. Phoebe and Andy, did that spark anything for either of you, or does that kind of lead into what you were thinking about in regards to your greatest successes?
I have a very different example.
Oh, that's great. Let's hear it.
Yours was, mine is just entirely different. The thing that came to mind when you'd asked this question was one thing that I wanted to make sure to improve when I joined this company from like what I had done in my last company. Was my last company, I felt like we were a little more reactive. What we were working on wasn't as visible. And with that, I don't think as many people asked my least favorite question, which is like, what is it that they do here? But in a role, it's so broad. If people don't see what you're doing, they only see like what they're getting out of you. And that can be problematic at times, especially when you're balancing a lot of different priorities. And so in this company, what I've been doing is a few weeks before the beginning of each quarter, been going around to the groups of stakeholders, talking about their priorities, their objectives, like what they're stating. And then I'd put together my proposal for the upcoming quarter, essentially our OKRs, objectives and key results, list out like the top level thing, and then specifically what was going to be delivered. And I'd present that to the group, the overarching group, which is essentially the executive team, and have them sign off on it. And then I have a meeting every other week with that same group where I present work done, progress towards that essentially, any blockers, especially ones that need to be discussed within that group, mention any work that was done that was outside of that, and then kind of show what's queued up next, and then rinse and repeat, quarter ends, reconcile that, and then, you know, do that whole exercise again. And that's been super, super helpful to keep track of, you know, to align myself with the business objectives, first of all, which is very important. And then also to just have that visibility so that everyone kind of knows like what's on deck, where there might be, you know, blockers. It's been a really, really, really helpful exercise.
Certainly sounds that way. And that goes back to that need for communication. I think that all three of you were talking about and how important and critical that is to the success of the, you know, your particular function within your company. So that's wonderful to hear. It sounds like a great structure. So I hope a lot of folks out there, if they aren't currently doing something like that, maybe they want to think about adopting that. And that could be something that could help. Andy, how about you? What do you think has been like one of your greatest successes?
Hi, mine are more of a technical nature. Certainly, we all deal with those communications and being a people person thing. But we recently went through a big overhaul, major like year and a half project to switch from our system of record from an old system to one that runs out of Salesforce, as well as because everything was all connected and all living in one place. That meant you got to have a new website and a new LMS that holds your training courses and this and this, and the systems we are keeping have to talk to the new system. So it was so many moving pieces. But we kind of focused on kind of way we thought about it was the 80-20 rule. Not so much keeping 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers, although true. But the let's not focus on something being perfect the first go round. Let's do 90% of the problems are solved or 80% of the problems are solved, and phase it out. Let me get this up and running. I do see some immediate improvements. These little small asks that are more fringe, they can wait, or do we really need them? Has really helped us a lot. So some more specifics. We got a new website, and one of the pieces of advice we got was don't switch to a new platform and overhaul the web design structure, like your sitemap and what is where and your URLs immediately. Do your transition and then plan out, okay, now we're going to update this part of the site and change this so you don't see a dip in SEO. And it really, really helped us. It was, I'm not a web expert, so for all I know, that's not a thing. But I know in 2014, we also did a similar transition and really had a lot of problems with some people couldn't find stuff and some revenue for certain products went down. So we definitely wanted to avoid that this time, and slowly transitioning and kind of focusing on let's do this, and then after that's up and running, let's do this, really helped us not hinder ourselves as we're launching into multiple new systems.
Andy, I have a question for you on that. Something I'm curious about. Is there a way that you're kind of evaluating the problems that you'd like to solve as you're ranking what you want to be able to do? Is there a common and consistent triage process for that, or is there a lot of disagreement on what is and isn't most important?
We're getting better. Certainly, the short answer is probably no. Not what we would like to have is some kind of like, let's answer this question and this question and this question, like the kind of stuff you were rattling off. Like we should always evaluate it from this. It's much more organic and discussion wise, but certainly we do look at like, is this customer facing? Is it what's a deal breaker and what's not? Is this related to revenue, or is this just a member benefit thing? What's the visibility, and how many people is it affecting? We hear about this a lot from customers, but it's only 10 people that it's affecting, or whatever the numbers are, that kind of thing. Those are the usual bevy of questions we kind of rattle through, but it's not nearly as formal or set of criteria that we run through. We definitely have to also struggle with balancing the different demands from different departments. So it's really helpful to kind of run through those criteria to gauge, okay, what's the most urgent? And then on top of that too, like, well, maybe that's a big problem, but I can't do anything about it right this second. So I can work on this other thing while we're prepping for this other big fix. I have become a sort of a project manager without meaning to as well, with some success.
Yeah, I think a lot of what Andy, what you were talking about there are some really key points that a lot of folks maybe should keep in mind, like talking about that minimum viable product, about putting things out that doesn't have to be perfect. It's just got to be meet the baseline criteria, and then that's your V1.
Yeah.
And then from then you can just improve upon, and keep kind of working
Minimum
on.
viable product. That's
Exactly.
the word I couldn't find. But also to not just do that, but communicate that to your stakeholders that we are doing a minimal viable product, because that's a good approach. That's why this is what you're going to see in round one, so that they know and don't panic. So you're managing those expectations, but so that you can report to the board and the customers know what the plan is, and that this is to be expected. We're working on that minimal viable product.
Exactly. And then another thing you mentioned was when you're migrating your website, not doing a full revamp of the entire site as you're kind of kicking it off. I've actually been involved in a project where we did that. We took one website, migrated it to an entirely new platform, and did a full website redesign. And I will tell you that it took us much longer, I think, than originally anticipated, by at least 3, almost 4 months, to get the full website redesigned and then migrated over to the new WordPress platform where we were going to launch it than we originally anticipated, because of the amount of work that was there. And so that definitely had some financial impacts in doing it that way. So I think you have, definitely had some good advice there. And like, sometimes it's just, if you're going to migrate platforms, sometimes it's like, let's take the old one, let's put it in the new one. Now that it's in the new one, now let's figure out what we can do in order to make it better and what we can do in order to change it. Because it was a big change, not only for folks internally who are looking at the website, but then all of our external folks. We did get a lot of emails because they were having difficulty navigating the new site at first. So those are a lot of key points that I think sometimes, it's shiny and new, you want to put something new in place, but we also have to keep in mind, like, there are end users who are using your product. How is this change going to impact them? And being able to communicate that change and roll it out slowly enough so that they're able to adapt and work with that. Sometimes those are pretty important things to keep in mind.
Well, and two, we wanted to make decisions based on, now we're in the new system and we're seeing, more people are landing on this page. We've got this other page that's also getting hits from the same. Well, let's combine those. Now we can start making good decisions based on data in the new system, and not try to do it all at once.
Exactly.
Now the flip side of that, website aside, was in our main system of record that handles order processing, memberships, and such like that, and people's training, is that we really pushed hard to, well, when we're transitioning that, I don't just want to recreate what we used to do in the old system, because one, that's because how that system worked and made us do it that way. But two, it's very easy to get stuck in your old processes, and, well, we've always done it this way. Everybody knows, we've all heard that, I'm sure.
Yeah,
You really gotta push back, and what's the real problem you're trying to solve? And sometimes the best you can do is, well, we mostly did that, and sometimes you can really, like, oh yeah, we were doing this thing and it's saving us a lot of problems. We got rid of this piece of this process, we automated this part. So it really gets down to what we're trying to accomplish, what our goals are.
100%. And I feel like that process mapping and kind of thinking through not only how have we done things in the past, but why are we doing them? And it doesn't make sense to do this continuing on in the future. I feel like this type of process mapping is something that we see across, across the different departments within revenue operations. I feel like Phoebe has dealt with this quite a bit at a couple of different companies. I don't know if there's any experiences in that area you'd like to share.
Just around the general topic of process mapping.
Sure.
I don't know that a witty anecdote's coming to mind. But yeah, I've definitely done that. What comes to mind more so is like joining the business to try to understand it and deconstruct what's potentially broken, especially when like as I was joining, they were complaining of things not working as intended and figuring that out, which was like a fun experience. Fun's a liberal term there, but it's interesting for sure. But I definitely use process mapping in general to start to understand teams as I was getting introduced to them, or as they were kind of evolving and changing, to figure out like what they looked like now, so that I could stay up to date with them.
Absolutely. I think that's really important information to know, and process maps, as much as they may be a pain to create, they are really valuable. So I always recommend them personally. Then the last main question I had, this is really about expert advice. You're all our experts here, right? And I want to ask you, like, if you're talking to our listeners here, what type of advice would you give to someone in your position at another company? Adam, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I will. I will answer that. And I will say, rely on the team around you and don't try to do too much yourself. That's a huge thing. It's a natural human instinct to think this is this thing and I can do it and I know I can do it, and teaching someone else how to do it might be too hard, or if I ask them to do it, I'm putting too much on their plate, or we become over-indexed, right? So the biggest piece of advice I could give anybody, independent of position, would be rely heavily on the team around you, and don't be afraid to understand the strengths of the people that are near you in ways that they might be able to help and to support on those initiatives, those projects, those things that are keeping you up. Never ever ever try to tackle it too much all at once, and you'll go a lot further. You'll go a lot further than you will if you take on too much burden at a time.
100%. I know that
Absolutely.
sometimes, like, folks will think about, well, if I do it, rather than giving it off to somebody else, I could probably do it faster. But if you think about that, if you've trained someone how to do what it is that you're trying to do right now, they will not only be able to help you on that one project, but should this come up again, now
Mhm.
you'll know that they understand how to do it, and you'll be able to have confidence in that they can pick that up and move forward with it, and you won't have to worry about it. So it starts to take stress off of your plate. It starts to really allow you to tap into the strengths of your team and to grow yourself as an entire team, and allow you to do more with still the same amount of people that are on your team, correct?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. I think that's great advice. Phoebe, what would you like to share with us? If you had to give some advice to someone in your position at another company, like, what's the most important thing that you want them to know about?
Sure. I'd say I'd have a hard time making a decision between the people and the tech because they're so combined, but I would say getting to know your stakeholders on a number of levels, like not just like the who they are or what their jobs are, but getting to know their roles more intimately, and then also getting to know them as people, like building rapport in every function across the business has been wildly helpful for me. It gives you people that you can go ask questions of, it gives you people you can get help from, you can get feedback from, you can like watch over their shoulders or doing a thing, but you can't do that if you don't have relationships with them, or especially in like a remote only workforce, like everything's in writing and people like assume intention or tone, and if you have relationships with people, they'll more likely assume a positive tone or like positive intent. So I found that to be, it's obviously a very large investment of time and energy, but it's really really important. And then on the flip side, just because RevOps is so tied to technology, understanding your tech stack pretty deeply is really important, especially as it interacts, and then definitely as it interacts with tools that maybe counterparts own, so that you understand the impact of those of changes you want to make. I spent a lot of time up front when I joined this company, for example, figuring all that out. And then as I needed to like deprecate fields or rip out tools or add tools, I more clearly understood the impact, and I could package up the changes and then go to my counterparts and share the information with them. Whereas if I hadn't, I might have just broken stuff across the business by accident. So I found those two things, again, all very heavy time investments, but very worthwhile.
100%. I mean, really understanding the why of what you're doing things is just as important as the how to go ahead and do it, right? Anyone could take a field off of a layout, but if you don't understand who's using it and why they're using it, then you could have some serious ramifications or downstream impacts. So that's great that, great information, great advice for, people to be able to do that. How about you, Andy? What
I'll,
do you
I'll
think? What advice would you give to someone?
I'll agree with Phoebe a lot on that, especially with we were working in an office prior to the quarantine, and so we could walk over, and we knew everybody and knew their personalities and quirks. Don't bother this person on this day of the week because they're doing the reports that stress them out and stuff like that. And so you kind of get a feel for how to communicate with them. But as we've got new folks joining the organization, you gotta, I don't know, take the time to meet them and turn on your camera all of the time, and you get to know them, and take the time to do that, and learn them and how they communicate. Um, and I think that's my biggest piece of advice is you've got to be a people person. You got to engage and update. I'm in IT, so I want to work on the tech, and I want to take care of my tickets and work on my projects, and work on my process improvements and my pet projects and to solve problems. But a lot of what I've had to learn, and I'm still working on, is the communication. So I'm doing, oh, these people are starting to get worried, and I get this vibe that they're a little freaking out or stressed about, like, we hadn't heard about this in a while. What's going on with this? Like, okay, I need a biweekly update. I'm gonna, like Phoebe was talking about. Let me, this, everybody see this. I'm gonna visually share what I've got. These are all the different tasks that I'm working with you on. This is the status of each. Share it up on the screen. Talk to them so they know it's being worked on. And it helps, especially visually. Like, I just share that we run our kind of projects in a smart sheet, and I just share that smart sheet and talk them through it. So not only do they see, like, oh, my task is up there, but they see, like, oh, Andy's on top of this, and oh gosh, look at all he's working on. Okay, right. It kind of reinforces that we do know what we're doing. We're working on it, and also talk through the challenge. Um, hey, this got delayed because we were working on this other thing you asked about, and stuff like that really helps people keep that communication up. Make yourself do it, because you don't want that worry to set in. And then likewise, same thing. Make sure your boss knows what you're working on and the challenges you're running into and stuff like that. It helps you. It helps the boss set their expectations internally and so forth.
I think you bring up a lot of very interesting points there. So some of the items that you're talking about is, having to just not only communicate, but sometimes you have to, I think you said be a people person. And so I know personally, knowing my behavioral profile, I am the opposite of people person. I'm very reserved. I am very much an introvert. And doing that type of communication, especially with a computer, I would tell you when we first started working from home, it was a challenge for me. Like, it was
Yeah.
tough for me to figure out how to communicate with those folks who needed to have like that interaction, who preferred to have that face to face. And I know that that was definitely tough for me because I wanted to give them what they needed, which is the interaction. But on the other side of things, my personal thing was like, oh gosh, I really have to get on the computer. This is crazy. This is hard. This is difficult. But then I saw the benefits of being able to give them what they need. Then they were able to give me what I needed in order to do my job better. So it wound up being a really good collaboration. But then the other side of things is understanding how people want you to communicate with them. So there are some
Mm-hmm.
folks out there who really want you to keep it short and sweet to the point, understanding who those folks are versus the ones who want all those verbose explanations of things and everything
Yeah.
process mapped out. And, understanding how to communicate with those individuals and who's on your team is going to allow you to really take things to the next level, because everyone now is going to read things the way they want to read it, or they're going to hear it the way they need to hear it in order to get what they need to help everybody move forward as a team. So I feel like this is something that falls kind of in Adam's wheelhouse as well, and that's something that you all are working on over at Sedalian, right?
Yeah, very much so. It's one of the things that, we talk to all of, our clients about, and a lot of the executive teams we work at, is approaching communication. I mean, the natural, your wiring behaviorally, right? And I will never forget the first time I was ever promoted to manage a team. I thought, I'm going to be the best manager ever. I'm going to treat this team exactly the way I like to be treated. And I'm going to do all the things for them that enabled me to be successful. And they were going to love it, right? Because the first lesson, probably the only lesson I can tell you that I was instilled in me in preschool that I still carry with me to this day is the golden rule, right? Treat everyone the way that you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your natural human wiring to do that, to approach the world, right? Your subjective bias is, if I like this or I think like this, then this person will too, right? And one of the things that we work with our clients on pretty deeply is you need to do the opposite. You need to approach the world according to what we call the platinum rule, which is treat others and communicate others the way that they're comfortable being communicated with and the way that they're comfortable being treated. And that might shift and vary a lot from person to person. Some of us, come off as very affable, very talkative. I love the time to myself and that introspection. I really need it. I need a moment to kind of pause and to analyze something and to begin to put things in process. And there might be a moment or two where I pop my head up and I bounce an idea off someone else. But if you start talking to me about something and when we're talking through it, we're never going to get to an outcome. We're going to go sidetrack. We're going to go over the place. We won't get to where we need to get, right? So one of the things that we work at as a team is to understand each other's communication styles, gaps, and make sure that we approach, our internal communications in that manner. And a lot of what we try to instill with our clients is that same challenge. COVID has made that obnoxiously hard, right? We're a little bit limited. Everyone kind of is in battling Zoom fatigue and the limitations that are on Slack, right? So it's, in part finding ways to navigate around that, to create comfort and style that allow that to still happen. But yeah, breaking that instinct that's wired into every one of us to approach everyone else the way that we approach the world is that of the way that other person wants the world to approach them. It's something it's really critically important. And when we can begin to, facilitate that, right, we can begin to see market improvement. The teams coalesce and teams begin to work together. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a lot of good things there and a lot to unpack, but hey, this is the new world we live in. I have a feeling that working remotely is no longer going to go away. This is the new normal for a lot of folks. So just understanding the best way to be able to continue to keep those lines of communication open so that not only can you relate to your team members on a personal level, but then that can also help you on a professional level to move forward the initiatives that you need to move forward in your particular department so that you can help the company grow, correct?
Exactly right. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, with that, those are the ends of my major questions. So what I want to do is I want to open up the floor and ask if there's any questions from the audience that anyone wants to jump in and ask. I've got kind of my panel open here. If anybody has put a question into the panel, then I figure we can kind of throw this out. And let me just give it a minute here to see if that populates. And I think, all right, I think I see the first question in here. So my first question that has come through says, what is your favorite piece of technology you use at work and why is it your favorite? I know that's
Salesforce was the obvious answer.
And why is that your favorite, Phoebe?
I mean, it's the pillar of everything. I don't know. It's I don't know. I didn't anticipate the follow-up question. Sorry. It's both rigid and flexible. It's both, malleable, but I don't know. It has a lot of potential, a lot of opportunity. I know it's not perfect, but it really lets you do such a crazy amount of things. And it is pushing the limits now of like, you need to be a dev less and less to accomplish a lot of really cool stuff. Time-based flows are like really exciting. I need to learn more about those. Like the scheduled jobs are like one of the last things I was really upset that you had to do in Apex. But that, and because it's so popular, you have the ability to buy any number of tools and integrate it. So it really can just be the hub of everything.
That sounds really interesting. I know personally, I definitely have a love for technology, and Salesforce is definitely in my list of top platforms of all time that I love to develop in and play in and whatnot for. I think the very reasons that you're talking about is it's so flexible that if you can dream it, you can do it, right? And it's just a matter of you need to have. I think a boss once said you need, as long as you have enough money and time and resources, you can do anything. Now the only question is like, well, what if you don't? What if you're missing some of those? Then that's where we're a little bit limited kind of here and there. But
I never have enough of any of those things.
I know, right? Don't we wish? But that's, I agree with you. Like that's definitely a great platform. How about Andy and Adam? Do y'all have different thoughts, or you kind of concur with Phoebe on this, or do you have something else that kind of comes to mind that you're like, oh, this is my favorite, and why is it your favorite?
And I would tell you Salesforce is my favorite. We're a little bit premature for our adoption and implementation of that, but we're trending in that direction here shortly. We are technology light, very honestly, today. I can tell you my least favorite is Office 365. I can't stand it.
Yeah. Fired.
But But in terms of some of my favorite stuff that that I'm using today, call me old hat, but there's something about PowerPoint that really gets me jazzed up and excited. They can't, Google Sheets will never be able to recreate the magic that exists in that red circle of the P. And you can put together some really powerful and impactful content within PowerPoint. Long term and over the course of my career, I would say there's nothing that even comes close to Salesforce and what Salesforce can enable business to do. And I think that's another, getting back to an earlier question, is we're in the process of evaluating our maturity as a business. Making sure that we are hitting that inflection point where we don't implement Salesforce too soon, but we don't wait too long to create a growth system of record before we get there. So.
Exactly. I mean, especially for a lot of startups, that question that you brought up is something that I have heard at multiple startups that I've worked at in the past, is like, when's the right time to implement that technology? And understanding when it's too early or when you've put too much money in that you can't get back out, it's a hard question to answer. And so you really have to understand your business really well. You have to figure out, okay, is it the right time now? What am I expecting to get out of this? And how can I go ahead and do this in the most economical manner? Sometimes it's, by going kind of full hog and say, all right, that's it. We're going to buy all of the things and just implement them all at once. Other folks take more of a stepped approach, like a phased approach, where they start small. And then as long as you have the core and as long as you have that core base of like a sales cloud, you can bolt on pretty much anything after that. It's just a matter of like, what do you want? What's most important to you? What's going to bring you the most value? And then as you build that, your system's going to get bigger and bigger and more interesting. And that's when it gets fun. You can start doing all those process maps and flows and all the things that make me excited and keeping me up at night thinking about all the cool stuff you can do with this. So perfect. Let's see, what do we have for a second question here? Just give me 1 second. So it looks like our second question is, and this is something I feel like we talked about this a little bit, but maybe there's something more explicit that we can kind of jump in there. So if you had to think about the biggest challenge that you see that your department faces when working with other departments at the company, what do you think that biggest challenge is? And why do you think that's your biggest challenge?
I'll hop in. I've already spoke about it a little bit, but my department is the IT department, and certainly the dealing with other departments, they don't know what the other is asking for. That well, we've got these, they don't. One department doesn't think it's asking for a lot. They've got these 3 requests. These are our asks. Well, I'm getting 3 or 4 or 5 from 4 or 5 departments, and it starts to add up. And so, of course, they don't know that they're doing their own thing, right? So making sure, managing all of that, managing expectations and evaluating priorities, and then communicating that is really, I think, our biggest challenge working with various departments.
And I feel like that kind of speaks to something Phoebe was talking about earlier, when that some other folks don't always know what you're doing, right? Or what you do. And sometimes they only see a tiny little piece of what it is that you do, and they don't understand like what the full breadth of your job is. And so like thinking about that, like how do you get that across to folks? Like how do you basically sell yourself within the company so that other folks understand what it is that you do? Do you have any thoughts or ideas on that?
I think my audio is dying. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
There we go. My video cut out. I mean, I talked about it a little bit, but really don't hesitate to do little update meetings and share the project plan and communicate the different tasks you're working on. We go through here's the known issues and bugs we're working on, and here's our progress on the major projects. So it helps communicate the breadth of what you're doing, as well as the different, I don't know, pots in the fire, fingers and pies, or whatever it is.
I think that makes a lot of sense there. So I think there's one more question. We've got time for one more. Oh, and this is a fun one. Okay, I like this one. So if you had an unlimited budget to make one change at work, what would you spend it on and why?
I'll go.
Go for it.
A really strong inbound marketing engine.
I was going to say all the demo requests.
Brian, why would you say that, Adam? Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, right now we are working based entirely on relationships and referrals. That's how all of our business. And we've got quite a bit of business and quite a good customer reach. And we're beginning to hit a point maybe where our demand is going to exceed our capacity. But I am sort of a founder and an owner, always worried about top of funnel. I mean, it is understanding the metrics behind how those opportunities are progressing through the funnel. It is. I want to find more ways to help demand exceed capacity. And having a really strong inbound marketing engine that isn't as reliant on my current clients selling for me, or my prior relationships and things, cultivating opportunity for us and for the business, is something that I would love to have in place, and that we're trying to organize capital as well to be able to put in place. So I know that everyone else in this panel says sometimes that's more pain than it's worth, or that opens that's a Pandora's box dilemma. But we are a bit of a gap there at the moment that I'd like to see us address.
I think that's very interesting. I know Phoebe also had some ideas there. You want to jump in?
I'd say all the demo requests. I think that's the lightly sarcastic answer that sales likes giving, and marketing says, like, what else do you need from us? It's like more demo requests. So I feel like that brand awareness, inbound marketing, I mean, that you can never have too. I mean, I imagine you could technically have too much of that, but those are champagne problems and we will take them.
That's right. Always better to have those champagne problems, right? What about you, Andy?
Problems. Be a good name for a band. If I had all the money in the world, I think that I don't know, two things come to mind. I mean, I've got some 2 or 3 systems that I want to get merged into one in Salesforce. We've got an old org or two from some other departments that I would just love overnight someone else to solve and get all of that done for me and do it right, and I not have to worry about it, because from then on we've got excellent transparency into all of the different parts we're doing. Instead of trying to make them talk to each other, I want to be able to see a holistic view of the different business units that we have. We've got the advertising sales team with automation.com that used to be a competitor, and then they were a sister organization, and now they're part of us at ISA, and but they're in their own Salesforce org. And really, you can't see there's a lot of overlap in customers, but we don't have a good holistic view, and therefore we can't really sell to them in a way that helps us, but also helps them, right? Like, you could be taking advantage of this and this that we also do. I think that'd be the biggest I do immediately. I also kind of like would like some kind of just overnight to be done, and Andy doesn't have to work on it, for some kind of interface for our customers that buy training, where they can go in and easily sign up the multiple people, which they can do now, but also track their progress against a kind of like, we put a training plan together. You need to take this, this, and this. Well, you've signed this person up for this and this, but not this. This is coming up. They canceled that, all in one interface. We've got pieces of that, but that's and it's one of our long-term goals. It's on our plan. But I would love for that to throw $1 million at that and have someone do it for me in a few months.
Wouldn't that be delightful, right? Now,
Yeah.
getting that 360 view of, who your prospects and your clients are, like, that's really important. I think that's where the power of these interconnected platforms comes in, because it truly will show you, what are people thinking about, what's most important to them, and how can you have a relevant conversation with them that's going to not only get them what you need, but get you as a business what you need from them. So it's a real symbiotic relationship, and it's all around access to data, and not only communicating with your prospects, but also getting all of that data and putting it at one place so that you can have that relevant communication that's really personalized to them. Because I feel like that personalized piece is one of the things that people expect nowadays. Like, they don't want just the generic, like, hi, first name. They're expecting you to have that conversation with them about what they want to talk about. And so you have to be that mind reader of being able to figure out what is it that they want to have a conversation about, and then be able to talk to them about that. And the only way you can do that is by having that view of what are all the things that they have, shown us to be really important to them. So then that way you can address that with them directly, right? Perfect. Well, I appreciate and I want to say thank you to everyone. I know that we're just about at time here, and I was so glad that all of you are able to join us here today. I'm glad, thank you to this panel for being able to participate in this discussion. I really appreciated all of the great answers and the great conversation that we were able to have today. Thank you to all of our viewers and attendees who are able to come and kind of listen to this conversation. And I hope that you're able to take something away from this and bring it to your company and help improve your particular company and move things forward. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. We're going to announce that sometime soon on our website at revenueopsllc.com. And hopefully, you all have a great day and you're able to move forward and enjoy the weekend.
You too, and thank you for having us and
Yeah, thank
putting
you.
this on.
No, thank you all. I appreciate it, and hope to see you all at the next one.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time. It's great to meet everybody, and
Yeah.
thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.